All right, we are live. This conversation's a little special. We're gonna try a shorter conversation, and this came from Mike and I were shooting some videos for an upcoming project that we'll launch probably next week, and we had an idea for a conversation that came from a question. So we're just gonna dive into it. The question gives as much energy as some of these other events like mass shooting. Obviously, they're horrific as well. But Mike, what's your initial kind of thoughts on that?
My initial thought is, well, will we be able to have this conversation in 20 minutes like we want to? But because we always say that. We're always
Fair.
going to do it quick. Right. No, but my initial thought on that is it's a tough one, right? Because there's probably many variables that contribute to the fact that suicide prevention doesn't get the attention that other things do. We all know the big elephant in the room is doesn't sell. It's not sexy. It's not something you can make money with ad space. But it's a real shame because that does a disservice to kind of the work that some of these organizations like ours, right, that are out there doing, because they never get that publicity. But on the other side of that, I think it's just a dark subject that nobody wants to tackle, right? Like no one wants to think the threat is within. You always want to think of the threat being the outside of the home, right? Not in here. This is a neighborhood too, right? And this could be a very bad neighborhood for people. And they don't even want to go there sometimes. And that's perfectly understandable. But I think like those two things coupled together make it really tough for this to be a topic of conversation because it's not fun. You know what I mean? And I guess that's what we're trying to do is like come up with these plans because planning can be fun. Like I like planning. I love having a plan. I work with a bunch of people that hate it and it drives me nuts. But I love, I think you're the same as me, but we all know who we're talking about when it comes to this organization. Most people are like, yeah, we're just going to wing it. It'll be fine. Right. But I love planning things. I love sitting down with people and planning out, you know, our goal, how we're going to get to that goal. So, to me, I think that we could make the planning for this event fun and never get there. And that way it's easier pill to swallow for people. What do you think?
Yeah, it seems like prevention and getting ahead of it's the obvious solution. And it's interesting on social media how people like, well, that's their choice, and they almost appear like they don't care about the individuals who are at that kind of stage 4 that Mental Health America talks about, um, that do take their lives with a firearm. Is it that people can't emphasize and relate to somebody in that mind state that's having that many struggles? Maybe they're lashing out in anger. I can't identify with that. But if you took them back a few stages, then maybe everybody would be able to identify, and maybe there would be more energy where it is that person with the family before all their mental health challenges built up and built up and built up and started to really negatively impact them.
Yeah, it's interesting when I think about some of the conversations I've had, and I get it. Like when you're having conversations on Facebook and Instagram, like it's easier to troll. Like those conversations, it's easier to like be like, I would tell that person to man up, or yeah, it's a cold world, Buttercup. Like I've actually had those conversations where I'm like, do you have no compassion like for people that go through it, or do you live your life where you never go through it? How does that work? But I think in the end, it's just people don't want to face that reality. I think that's the toughest part, right? We like, as the gun community, we got there with vets, right? Like combat vets and first responders. Like we figured that out a long time ago. Like we always had compassion for them because of what they went through. Somehow we had a little bit of a disconnect when it just came to the regular everyday gun owner. Um, and you like take the term PTSD. PTSD is something that's literally associated with vets. we're getting better as a society of understanding that PTSD could be the fact that you lived in a neighborhood where you were walking over dead bodies to go to school because of gang violence, right? It's the same as a battlefield sometimes, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be dead people, right? For you to have PTSD, it just could be your struggle. But, you know, in my opinion, it's like people don't want to face that. And it's that old school mentality. It's the mentality my family had. You know, it's that I'll give you something to be depressed about. I'll give you something to have anxiety about. Like keep it moving, right? It's that tough love type of attitude that a lot of gun owners have when it comes to the mental health of other gun owners. And I just don't know why we don't prioritize this in the community. Because once again, as I've said over and over, every negative outcome will be used against us, no matter what. Right. So we should be banding together to try to prevent and encourage no more negative outcomes as best as we can. We'll never have zero negative outcomes. That's impossible because we're human. But at the same time, we can do a better job of spreading that message.
Yes, and then it was interesting you started with there's not a lot of money to be made in this area, and then connected it with kind of the veterans to where we see a lot of organizations have a lot of great t-shirts and raise a bunch of money to support veterans. But you're right, we haven't connected the dots to the average everyday gun owner. It's almost like they're in the mindset of like, it's okay, like you say, they had this traumatic experience that everybody gives them a pass, but the two-way community hasn't unified to be like, hey, everybody goes through some stuff. It's okay to have mental health issues and challenges as an everyday person and open up. I know Jake mentions the overwhelming kind of demographic is maybe elder male people that take their own lives by suicide. And um, it it makes sense too, because I think I know you went through it in the sports community and growing up in competitive sports, and I did too. Of if you have an injury, you're supposed to hey play through it, and just kind of like stuffing down any emotions or weakness. You're not supposed male generations that I'm around, of family of grandparents or my dad or stuff like that, trying to think of times that they were emotionally vulnerable in my life. Do I even need a hand outside of maybe funerals and stuff like that to count them? Probably not. It's just not part of the male culture and seemingly gun owning culture as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting where this community goes because the older white male, right, which is I guess when people look, especially outsiders, when they look at the gun community, that's what they think of, right? And rightfully so. For many years, it was this issue where we had trouble attracting other people to our community. But now with the expansion of the community in terms of who's becoming involved, who's understanding their Second Amendment right, it's for them too, right? And they're here, like it all walks of life. You're going to start seeing that demographic of suicide by firearm change. It's just going to be a natural progression. It has to be because now you're having just all walks of life now coming into the community, starting their own groups in the community, understanding the importance of the Second Amendment, and it's just naturally going to go hand in hand. So I even look at those numbers and I'm like, okay, like it's even more important now for us to kind of talk about this because now we're introducing new people and in the past, it's always been that gun owner has that monolithic kind of like stereotype, like they're this one type of person, right? And I poke fun at it just because like I came into the community young. You know what I mean? I get at a young age, and it was true, right? But now it's changing. So I think we have to figure out a way to kind of get out of that box that the gun community has put themselves in where it comes to being philanthropic. It's like, oh, if I had $1 for every gun company, it's like, oh, I give to a veteran community, or a veteran organization. And that's great. Like, I don't want you to stop giving to them too, but this is completely different than that. Like, I hate it when people look at Walk the Talk America and say like, oh yeah, 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 like what we do for wounded warriors, or it's no, it's a completely different beast. There's some overlap with veterans, and I've had veterans tell me one of the reasons why they appreciate Walk the Talk America is because it talks to all gun owners. It doesn't just single out vets or active duty military or first responders as if they're the only broken people on the planet and they're the only ones that need help and we're the only ones that can help them. You know what I mean? Like there's people that they just want to be a gun owner. Like they don't want to be identified any other way than someone who loves the Second Amendment, and they're here. That's why they're at our shows. You know what I mean? That's why they come to the community. So it'll be really interesting to see how that changes. But I think we need to really shift the focus, um, on gun owners just in general, and make it, like you said, something fun, something sexy to talk about, right? Like in a way that it's not off-putting, a way that it's not doom and gloom, the end of the world. As we said in the videos that we were cutting before this, right? This is about prevention, not intervention. We want to stay in the prevent mode, not intervene. Like we don't want to go there. So, hopefully we'll move that direction.
Glad you got that line right in the live. We took what, 4 or 5 takes just on that language itself.
I got it in my head. I flipped those two around, and I would get to the point where I'd almost nail the damn script, and then I would do that. But I got it. It's just
in your mind, what do you think's the biggest motivator for gun owners that are hesitant for themselves? I know in our experience of promoting the screenings or uh, else, when in reality it could be a great tool for every gun owner. No, you probably don't need mental health screening every week or month, but yourself get a baseline on normal time, not a terrible idea.
yeah. I think like the hesitation just because I was in a meeting. Okay, I'm going to tell a story. It's going to kind of relate to what you asked. Like I was in a meeting with one gun company at SHOT Show, and the guy flat out said it. He's like, "Man, having this car in a box is depressing." And he's like, "When I think of buying a gun, he's like, I think of like Christmas, right? I get excited like I did when I was a kid with presents." So he was just like, I think people don't want to necessarily open their gun box and be like, "Hey, you're at a potential risk to shoot yourself." Like, think about that, right? And although I hear what he's saying, I don't necessarily agree with him. That's just one man's opinion on he's happy, right? And he doesn't want anything to get in the way of his pursuit of happiness with his new firearm. But you know, eh, I think it's hard for people, especially gun owners, when they feel like I have this tool, and this tool is going to empower me to protect my family and my community, and I can't be weak. You know what I mean? So I don't even want to think about it. Which I think we understand. We get it. We're not saying you are going to be weak. We hope that you never will be weak. We hope that you never will go through a dark time where you don't know what's up, down, left, right anymore, right? Like that's what we want. We want you to stay mentally healthy. And that's why we're saying, let's just make this part of a gun ownership plan, like the mental health plan side of it, just like you do any other part of gun ownership. Um, I always tell a story about, especially when I talk to media. I was talking to a girl that worked for CNN and The Guardian like 2 weeks ago. And I laugh because, every time I say it to a non-gun person, I'm like, I have a ton of guns staged around my house, all, secured because I have kids or whatever. But when I say it, I know it sounds funny. And I'm like, listen, I'm not like a doomsday prepper. I'm just prepared. Right. Like, and they're always like, they always kind of laugh, but I know that they don't understand the world I'm coming from. Cause I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm standing in my kitchen and that chance that somebody breaks into the house somewhere and I can't get to a firearm. So I just like having my gun secured all around the house. That's my plan for that day, right? Like, or every day, right? Now, being that I work in this and I'm constantly on top of my own mental health, and I have to be, I think that the mental health plan is just as important as that plan. And I think that is the fun part of gun ownership. And especially if you have somebody in the house that may not be into you having a firearm, or, you're including them now in this process. You're making the people in your home feel safe. Like, those are like, this is what I guarantee you. I guarantee you that if dad ever starts to go this route, we have a plan in place to make you feel more comfortable. I even have a mental health plan for you, and you have no access to the firearm. So believe it or not, I have a plan for you, right? Like, that's the type of communication we need amongst our friends and family as gun owners, to take this to another level, to reduce that number of suicides. And we have to get there, because we had a massive explosion of firearm sales during all the civil unrest, right? And that's great for the industry, but we have to recognize the fact that some more negative outcomes could come from that. And if we get ahead of this, I think it's just good for our community. It's good for the industry as a whole, and it's good for the rest of the world to see that we're leading this charge.
Yeah, I think my most excited piece of the plan that we're working on is just starting the communication between people that maybe wouldn't have talked about mental health before. I don't I don't expect all the gun owners to go through the plan and answer every question. I don't expect maybe all of them, just because there's some, even when you say, oh, that's a great idea, some people have a lot of energy towards it and others are very hesitant because this is new and mental health is an uncomfortable topic. But just of, hey, this medication I have has suicidal thoughts as a possible side effect. Can you temporarily take the barrel of my firearm from me for whatever 14 days? And oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that next time I'm in that situation. And could have a rolling impact to gain a little bit more momentum. Clover chiming in. Thank you for joining, Clover. To talk about mental health is to admit that you yourself can suffer from mental health issues, and that scares people. You kind of touched on that, Mike, but that was the question of like, why do people in the chat think that suicide prevention isn't sexy? And yeah, I think that's a big one.
Yeah, I think it's just tough for people to talk about their own potential demise, right? Like, it's kind of like talking about your plane crashing if you're about to travel next week with your wife, or your husband or something like that. That, like, that's a conversation that nobody really wants to talk about, right? Nobody wants to prepare that. I mean, it's hard enough for people to make a will, for Christ's sakes, you know what I mean? Like, I have so many friends where I'm like, you have a will? And they're like, no. I'm like, I know we're still fairly young, right? But anything could happen at any time. So it's like, you have to be prepared. So yeah, I agree with them. I think it's tough for people to kind of face that and understand that you might be there. Or the other thing too is just like, so many people live in the moment. You know what I mean? Like, you live in the moment in everything. I mean, at the height of my career, when I made the most money in my life, I never thought that would end. I never thought that I would be doing nonprofit work. You know what I mean? So it's just like everything. People live in the moment, or they live in that time. I had this discussion with a friend the other day, and he said, well, what if you made this amount of money? I said, I'd probably spend that amount of money, right? Like, just naturally, that's how it works. Now I'm a little bit older. Maybe I would definitely, but when I was younger, if I'd have been making that type of money at that age, I would have spent that type of money. Like, that's exactly how it would have gone. Right. So we live in the moment. We don't think about the future. We don't want to face our own demise. Like, I get it. But I will tell you, on the flip side of that, I've talked to a lot of people in this line of work, that have shared stories with me. Some live to tell, right? Some live to tell. When you think about, we've had suicide survivor suicide by firearm survivor on this show. But I've had a lot of people that wish they would have had that plan, that wish that they would have prepared for that dark day, because they never knew it was going to happen. Or, I've talked to people that wish they would have secured their firearm because their son, you know, didn't show any signs. And then one day they didn't put the guns away after hunting. and they had a good time together. And kid shot himself. He took the gun and shot himself, right? Like these are things that I think, like in hindsight, like, nobody has a time machine, but people realize when it's too late that a simple plan could have made a world of difference.
Yeah. Yeah, we're wrapping up. We hit 20 minutes, but the mental health plan is going to come out probably next week. We're making the final adjustments, last edits from a few people. But when it comes out, what's the one thing that you hope gun owners gain from it?
I just hope gun owners can look at it and take one thing from it and say, yeah, that's a good idea. Or, yeah, I need to think about that. I get it. There's going to be a lot of gun owners that are going to have that knee jerk reaction that they always do when it comes to our work. Guns and mental health. Why are you blaming the gun? Da, 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 right? All the stuff that we hear over and over again, which is old, played, and tired. Like, we get it. Like, you live in a world where you're like Ivan Drago. If he dies, he dies. Like, you don't care. I get it, right? But remember, every negative outcome of firearms will be used against us. And suicide is the only thing, it's the only one that the gun industry actually can make a difference in, like a true difference. So we might as well use these plans, use this information, find something we love about it, and focus on that, not about the negative stuff. Just focus on that. How can this plan help you make you and your family safe? And it doesn't have to be now. It could be in 6 months from now. It could be in 10 years from now. It could be in 20 years from now. Just have that plan. So that's the one thing I hope that they take from it.
All right, take us home.
All right. Everybody that jumped in on this, we would thank you for coming in, Clover. Yeah, yeah, I appreciate it. This is a little bit of an impromptu one, but we want to, like always, thank our sponsors. I really want to send a special shout out right now to Davidson's and Arms Corps and Ruger. The three of those companies, not all of our sponsors are great. Everybody we appreciate, Lipsy's, everybody, but I want to just highlight those three because they all donated to the very first like live fire Kids to King event. Davidson's donated 3 firearms. Arms Corps took care of the ammo, and Ruger's been a godsend. You know, they have helped us out financially to where we could actually throw this event and actually have a facility for these kids to go to and enjoy themselves. But I want to thank those 3 companies from the bottom of my heart. Like I can't express how great it is that this was donated solely for this project too. It wasn't just a donation to Walk the Talk America. It was to Kids to Kings, right? And a lot of people make accusations about the firearms industry, which just make me sick to my stomach because they're just not true. And those 3 companies just proved that. They just smashed that because when I told them what Kids to Kings is, I told them who we're trying to help and who we're trying to get into the shooting sports, they were like, that's awesome. What can we do for you? Done. So thank you. Thank you, Davidson's. Thank you, Ruger. Thank you, Arms Corps. I can't thank you enough. And till the next time, folks, we'll see you soon.